Good evening. Welcome to tonight's session on the Orthros of Great and Holy Friday that we serve the evening of Holy Thursday. I'm Chris Farha. I am the diocesan coordinator for DeWama, Diocese of Wichita and Mid-America. I'm the choir director at St. George Cathedral in Wichita, Kansas, and I'm Greg Abdullah's friend, I think. So tonight we will let Greg explain this service to us, give a brief overview, and then we'll move into singing some of this beautiful music. We have Byzantine chant, and we have some choral arrangements. Most of the choral arrangements are Professor Hilco's arrangements. Just humor me for a moment. I want to tell you a little story about Holy Thursday music. And, you know, as a child going to church, Holy Thursday was a very long service, but as a choir member, as an adult, it has become just our favorite. I was introduced to Professor Hilco's music when I was in my early 20s, and you don't have to do the math, it was over 40 years ago. The nurse at the Antiochian village, many of you know her, Pearl Nahas, would play cassette tapes. And I walked in the infirmary and I heard something that was the most beautiful hymn I'd ever heard. And it was the Exapostolarian from this Holy Thursday service, sung by the Little Falls, New Jersey choir at St. George. So that was my first taste of music that would change my life, and it did. From there, because you know, I was a business major in college and never took a music class, but things like this and Sacred Music Institutes are my education. It's the School of Hard Knocks. But I just hope that you can see tonight and appreciate the beauty of both traditions being sung and portrayed here this evening. So I'll save another story for later about our Holy Thursday Hilco music. From here, I hand it over to Greg.
Thank you, Chris. You are definitely my friend.
Thank you.
I first met Chris when I was at the very first Sacred Music Institute that I ever went to when I was 15 years old. And I haven't stopped laughing at her jokes since because it's fantastic. We have a lot of fun when we're together. It gets dangerous if we're in a choir together because sometimes those jokes happen in the middle of singing, but it works. I'm going to share a little story about Holy Thursday as well. When I was in college, Bishop Basil came to Pittsburgh, where I grew up, and he gave a talk on the Sunday of Orthodoxy, which the Clergy Brotherhood in Pittsburgh every year used to have an icon festival during that weekend. And he was the keynote speaker one year. And he said one afternoon that he had seen the Passion of the Christ. It had just come out, and that it was very powerful to see in that movie, in the Passion of the Christ, everything that we hear happening during the course of the gospel readings on Holy Thursday evening, the Orthros of Holy Friday. And he said it really like helps bring to light everything going on. Fast forward later that evening at the Vespers service, the Greek Metropolitan of Pittsburgh, Metropolitan Maximus, now thrice blessed memory, stood up and he said that he had gone to see the Passion of the Christ, and to not waste your time going to see it. It wasn't very well done, and to just go to church on Holy Thursday evening because it gets the same point across. At any rate, whether you like the movie or don't like the movie, the point is the same. The Passion Gospels, the 12 Gospels that we hear on Holy Thursday evening, show us, teach us, remind us, and really bring home for us what Christ did for us and what it means to be people who follow the cross of the Lord. The structure of the service itself is an orthros service. And if you remember back last week, I'm sure during the discussion of orthros of the bridegroom orthros services, as well as last fall when Father John and I talked about orthros. Orthros is typically a morning service, which literally means morning. Takes place at sunrise and focuses on a theme of light. Now, during Holy Week, everything is flipped upside down. Everything is turned over as we're getting closer and closer to Christ's resurrection, which really sends the world topsy-turvy. And Lent kind of does this all the way leading up to it, but Holy Week really drives that point home. So we have morning services happening at night in anticipation of the next day. We have evening services happening in the morning. For example, the evening divine liturgy that will be celebrated on Holy Thursday morning prior to this service. It's a combination of monastic and city worship, as we're going to see, and it includes elements from the Orologian, Evcologian, and in this case, specifically the Triodian. There's no Manean, there's no Octoichos, and there's no Pentecostarian on Holy Thursday evening. It is only from the Triodian. It is only, as we'll see, those 3 odes in the canon and whatnot. The service starts the way that services start, with Blessed is our God. And these things come from the Orologian. We hear Blessed is our God and the Trisagian prayers. We then hear what we call the imperial beginning. But unlike Orthros on a Sunday, in addition to hearing, O Lord, save thy people, and the 2 Troparia that follow, we also hear the royal Psalms, Psalms 19 and 20, which have a lot that remind us who Christ is and everything that Christ has done for us, but also were only said when the emperor was there, which is where that city worship comes into play. We then hear those 6 Psalms that we're used to hearing at Orthros on a regular Sunday, which is where the monastic tradition comes in. And then we have the great Actenia, because we're Orthodox and we can't help but have Actenias every step of the way. But really, these Actenias, as much as the great Actenia, it seems like it's repetitive, it is our prayer for the entire world that we repeat at almost every service. And we pray for a whole lot of things. Following this, we hear the Alleluia and the Apolitikion, but instead of hearing the Apolitikion of the bridegroom service, we hear When the Glorious Disciples, talking about the feet washing, something that we heard in the gospel story Thursday morning, something that many parishes will still do. I was sitting with my uncle this past week, and he said, do they still wash people's feet on Thursday of Holy Week? And I said, well, yeah, at some parishes, they still wash people's feet. And he was like giddy thinking about that. And I was like, well, if you went to church, you would still know that they do that, but that's a whole nother story for another day. We hear this beautiful hymn, When the Glorious Disciples. Now, Chris is going to take a moment and introduce the Hilco music that she was speaking of with the Alleluia and When the Glorious Disciples. And then we'll look at the music from Father John El Messia for the same text.
Okay, the very first year that Bishop Basil was our priest, Father Basil, he brought to me 28 pages of music, and it was the Hilco Holy Thursday music. He said, I want you to teach this to the choir. So we worked really hard. We learned it. We got into church that night, and, new music, first time singing it. People are slightly nervous, and the electricity went out. We had no lights, but the service had to go on. One of the ushers came, he brought us all candles. And for years, our Holy Thursday music had candle wax, droplets all over it. Anyway, so I hope you have electricity and that you can see this. It will begin with the verses, and the response is Alleluia. And there's 4 verses, and then we'll go into when the glorious disciples immediately thereafter. So, Greg, if you would please hit the sound, and ladies and gentlemen, follow along. Sing if you want.
My spirit seeks thee early in the night watches, for thy commandments are a light on the earth. Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia. Learn righteousness, ye that dwell upon the earth. Alleluia. Shall seize upon an untaught people, and now fire shall devour the adversaries. Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia. Bring more evils upon them, O Lord. Bring more evils upon those who are glorious upon earth.
Greg, stop the sound for a moment. Thank you. One thing I did not mention, I apologize. We sing this 3 times. And so after you sing it through once, there's the glory. Then we sing it through again, and both now and ever, and we sing it the 3rd time. We recorded it with all of that, but Greg will stop it after we do the glory. I just want you to hear how that is done. You'll just, the piece will end, if you look at the on page 2, and then you'll sing the glory in the pitch where you begin when the glorious disciples, okay? So roll them.
Such things again.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that with us, Chris.
It just there, I feel like all of this has such a peace about it.
Hmm.
Um, no
It's
matter how your day has unfolded, um, you know, once the service commences, from then on, it's otherworldly. Okay, Greg.
no, it's true. The way he harmonized everything, it's fun. There's, in Slavic practice, there's multiple ways that you can harmonize. They have tighter, and then they have kind of the wider harmonies. And all of Hilko's music, like, well, I don't want to say all because I'm sure there's some that's not as well done, but like most of the things that he's done have a really good blending of all of those different nuances that are available to him. It's fun.
As you go through all of that music, you'll find 3 or 4 repeating melodies.
Hmm.
And so
Yeah,
what we selected for tonight's presentation just touches on those.
it's fantastic. So to look at the Byzantine music, Father John has done a nice setting of this troparion. Um, it's pretty exciting to. I'll just say from someone who grew up going to to Holy Week services, but didn't realize that this troparion had music to it until he got to seminary. It was pretty nice to be at a place like, because everyone sings the bridegroom troparion together, whatever version gets used, and then usually, like in some parishes, we would come to this one and then be like, you go, you go, you go. But it's nice to have music again. Um, and again, whatever your parish's practice is, Holy Week is I'm going to say something about Holy Week for a minute. In general, Holy Week is a beautiful time for preparation and that peacefulness that Chris was just talking about. And where that peacefulness starts to erode is 9 times out of 10 in arguments that are happening between singers. So let's not focus so much on, you know, let's just, in the words of Rodney King, let's just all get along. Like, it's just a beautiful way that we can share different styles. There's, just because you come to a parish that maybe does things differently than what you're used to doesn't necessarily mean that that's the wrong way to do it, and vice versa. When I grew up in New Kensington, Pennsylvania at St. George, moved to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, St. George, moved to Worcester, Massachusetts, working at St. George, and currently I work in St. George and Phoenix. There's a whole lot of St. George going on, and at each St. George, there are different things are done a little bit differently at different parts. Um, how this service gets combined in the kind of the way that what the choir does and what the chanters might do, um, it gets broken out differently. And in many parishes, this becomes kind of, um, not all, but in many parishes, this becomes kind of the night that the choir starts to come. And then the chanters are like, well, we've been here all week. And like, just stop. Like, one thing that I will say that Chris has built in Wichita is there's a great reputation of how smoothly the services go together and how everyone knows who's doing what. And the choir and the chanters really get along beautifully and work together very well. And we can all um, we can all emulate that uh, uh, as best as we can. So Father John's version of When the Glorious Disciples. When the glorious disciples were being illumined at the evening washing, Judas of evil worship was stricken and darkened with the love of the silver. And unto lawless judges, O righteous judge, he delivered and surrendered thee. Wherefore, O lover of wealth, behold him who for its sake did hang himself, and flee thou from that greedy soul which ventured thus far against the Master. O thou whose goodness pervadeth all, glory to thee, O Lord. And then if you do the final ending, O thou whose goodness pervadeth all, glory to thee, O Lord. I will say it is common in Slavic practice when you repeat a troparion to sing glory and both now in between. Byzantine practice typically does not sing the glory and the both now in between. So if you were to be doing this, you wouldn't necessarily hear a glory in both now. But if your priest tells you sing glory both now, that doesn't mean he's wrong. It just means he probably is coming from a different practice. So make sure you do what the priest says. Anything to add before we move on? Any
Sure.
questions? Yeah,
I have something to add.
that's perfect.
We always just sang it once. And, um, things change. Clergy learn and maybe don't communicate what they've learned or what they desire. And
Mhm.
so in the midst of the service, we had a monk who was waving from behind the altar and trying to get my attention. And I looked because there was a pause, and he held up 3 fingers. And I did this, and he did this, and I did this, and he did this. And so I said, "Sing it again." He said, "Yeah, 3 times." So that's when I learned that it was to be sung 3 times. We did that. And then the next year they told us to insert the glory in now. So there you have the full story. I won't tell you about every little detail in my life, but it's those kind of things that help us remember, humiliation um, is a good thing. We have to stay humble.
Greg,
Yes.
I also have something I'd like to add about this hymn. You notice the
Wonderful.
translation that we use here, while the glorious disciples were being illumined at the evening washing. If you look in the Nasser or the Holy Week book, we realized, I don't know, last year, this was done, in 18. So a couple of years ago, we realized that the translation was wrong. It says in the Holy Week book, while the glorified disciples being illuminated at the evening washing. So it's not that they're glorified disciples, they're the glorious disciples. They were being illumined, not being illuminated, just little things like that. So we tried to correct it. If you notice, if Peter publishes this service, which I don't think he has, and put the Holy Week services up, but the music is there, and it is correct when the glorious disciples. So if you see a difference, realize that this is the correct translation. That's all. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. It's always fun to have the stories kind of behind the scenes without having to go to VH1's Antiochian Archdiocese behind the music. So moving on, after we sing this troparia 3 times, unless your priest comes out and waves his arms in the middle of the service and tells you only sing it once because he just turned the page and realized that he's got 12 pages of one gospel that he needs to get through, we begin the gospels. And for the first 5 gospels, there are 3 major components that are happening. We have gospel, and then usually 1 or 2, maybe 3 antiphons that are read. And then we have a kathisma at the end of the antiphons, kathisma or Kontakion, and then we move on to the next set of gospels. And this interplay, I'm not going to belabor gospel 1 is then read, and then antiphons 1, 2, 3, and then it's in the text, but these kind of replace the kathisma in a matin service and those hymns that we would hear, where today we only hear like 6 of the kathisma readings, but for this service we have 15 antiphons with the kathisma that are really like basically giving us little sermons about each of the gospels as we hear them. And then the kathisma go before the next one. And Chris is going to take a minute to talk a little bit about the music that Hilco has in his book for the Lord have mercies and with thy spirits, and then the glory and the glory at the beginning and end of the gospel, because they are different. And like I was saying, different parishes are going to figure out how to make this happen in different ways. In Pittsburgh, the choir would sing all of these, and then the chanters would pick up with the antiphons. In Worcester, the choir would sing the first three, but not the very last one because they didn't have music for that. And then the chanters would sing the antiphons, and then the choir would sing the kathisma. And there was a lot of this back and forth that was going on so that everyone was participating in different ways. So it varies depending on what people have for music, what people are able to do. And most of those decisions are being made for pastoral reasons that, we just need to be contacting and discussing with our clergy.
Very good. We're going to play for you Hilco's arrangements of the three Lord have mercies in a minute. And so you notice before the gospel, glory to thy passion, O Lord. And following the gospel, glory to thy long suffering, O Lord. Now, if you have a bishop serving and he chants the first gospel, when you sing glory to thy long suffering at the close of the gospel, you'll attach many years to the master after that. So what we do is we just look at the notes of and with thy spirit and sing many years to the master after we sing glory to thy long suffering, O Lord. And then after, many years to the master, the rulers of the nations. But this is better done with nicer voices as we have on the recording. So we've recorded the Lord have mercies, and you'll notice you give a major chord to begin those Lord have mercies, but it goes minor quickly. And the responses before and after the gospel, of course, are minor. So Greg, if you'd play those for us, please.
Lord have mercy, Lord have mercy, Lord have mercy. And with thy spirit, glory to thy passion, O Lord. Glory to thy long suffering, O Lord. Many years to thee, Master. The rulers of the nations took counsel against the Lord and against his anointed. Words contrary to the law they contrived against me. Wherefore, Lord, O Lord, forsake me not.
I think my favorite part about looking at this Hilco music is seeing all the page numbers from books that we don't really get to use that much anymore. I saw a Hapgood, I'm seeing a Nasser, but it's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
finally, oh no, and then the 10th antiphon.
Oh, yes, okay. This is just to illustrate, another one of those repeating melodies. Okay?
He who decketh himself with light as it were a garment, stood naked at the judgment seat, and received buffetings upon the cheek from those whom he had created. The iniquitous people did also nail to the cross the Lord of glory. Then was the veil of the temple rent in twain, and the sun was darkened, for it could not endure to behold affronted the God, before whom all things do quake. Unto him that does bow down.
I love the dissonance of that ending there. Let us bow down. Oh my goodness.
It's fun. It's also fun that thy resurrection, O Christ our Savior, is in the same tone. And following
Yeah.
Obichod, I mean, it's always fascinating to me when we see things written in the same tone. So often it's trying to drive something home to us. And every time I hear, Obichod tone 6 like this, I automatically go to that like procession as a little kid during the rush service and
Mhm.
hearing that thy resurrection, O Christ
Oh.
our Savior. It's amazing. After the 14th antiphon, which comes after the fifth gospel, we then get the 15th antiphon. And with the 15th antiphon, we typically see a procession. And that procession is done in some way with the cross being carried around, whether your priest carries it over his shoulder or holds it in front. The procession is happening with the cross. And while the procession is happening with the cross, traditionally we would hear the priest sing, "Today he is hung on the tree, he who suspendeth the earth upon the waters." Typically this is chanted in a style that is similar to the epistle. When talking about this with Father John earlier today, he really the quote unquote traditional way to do this would be that the priest sings it in that style as though it is the like epistle or gospel. Today is hung upon the tree he who suspended the earth over the waters, and go on and on with all of the verses like that. And then the chanters or choir would repeat it. And in Byzantine practice, typically this would be chanted in tone 6, as we're going to look at the music momentarily. As time goes on and people, think that they can always do it differently, chanters started singing it the same way the priests would sing it. And it becomes sometimes what I like to call Byzantine karaoke, where anyone and everyone that thinks they can do it, similar to like we hear with the communion hymn at communion in some places, everyone thinks I'm going to show up to church on Holy Thursday just so I can sing that. They might not be there, the entire rest of the year at the chanter stand, but they show up just to do that. And if you don't let them do that, then they're not going to come again until the next year when they want to do it again. But it's really like in all things that we do in church, these things are to be done with the proper order. Like the repetition of this hymn is functional so that the procession has enough time to get through. So if that means you have to sing it 3 times, then you sing it 3 times. But if that means that you only have to sing it 1 time after the priest goes, then only sing it 1 time after the priest goes. And as the service is over and everyone's coming up to venerate the cross, then maybe you have an opportunity for other people that want to try their hand at things. But let's not make a spectacle out of the procession with the cross. With that, I turn it over to Chris.
I gathered my choir Sunday afternoon to do these recordings because I think it's, you can look at music, but when you hear it, you learn it quicker. So we actually sing this. It's a version from the St. Vlad's book. And just, it sounds so full when you have several voices. We try to sing it softly. And my choir member who was recording, as she was editing this piece, accidentally cut the first third off. So what I'd like for you to do is focus your eyes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 systems down, somewhere in there. The recording will start. But it begins today. He who hung the earth upon the waters is hung upon the tree. So, Greg, if you would please start the music and focus your eyes down to the King, ladies and gentlemen.
On the tree, He who
Greg, you're on mute. There we
I
go.
fixed it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So,
This is my choir of 10. We refer to ourselves as the Corona Choir. And usually we'll have 25 singers, but during this pandemic, when we were able to go back to church, there were 10 who were comfortable. And I'm not sure, how to transition back or when, but all in God's time. Sure, I appreciate what all singers across the archdiocese have done to help people who have been confined in their homes, and I foresee a lot of Holy Week just even being the same way. I don't know. Are you opening up more, Greg, in Phoenix?
it is unclear what's going to happen as of now, because we have the governor saying one thing, but we still have the archdiocese's directives that we are following. So I mean, we're, as a state, he's lifted any kinds of mask mandates, and he's lifted any and all restrictions on how many people can be in a place.
Okay.
But how that's working out has been, we're still figuring everything out.
Yeah.
Every day is a holiday.
Yeah. Oh,
I'm very excited, though, to say the very least, that this year, even if it's a limited number, we'll at least still have some people in church for Holy Week. Last Holy Week was pretty rough, as far as not having everyone around and all of those changes. It was pretty tough. So this is the music from Kazan's section, or the Kazan's Holy Week books, also written in tone 6, and we'll look at that. And then if there's any questions, by the way, that feel free to write any of your questions down in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer them as we go. I've been looking every so often, but nobody's asking any questions. What was that, Chris?
yes, I keep monitoring the chat as well.
Nay, today is suspended on a tree, who suspended the earth over the water. And then that's obviously repeated 3 times. A crown of thorns was placed on the head of the King of angels, he who wore the false purple robe, covered the heavens with clouds. He was smitten, who in the Jordan delivered Adam. The groom of the church was fastened with nails, and the son of the virgin was pierced with a spear. Thy sufferings we adore, O Christ. Thy sufferings we adore, O Christ. Thy sufferings we adore, O Christ. Make us to behold thy glorious resurrection. So that's the Kazan version, and he has 2 versions. I chose to go with this one because I made less mistakes when I sang it the first time than the other one where I made more mistakes when I sang it
Good
through the
move.
first time. Yeah, you know, it's being recorded and
Mm.
whatnot. It's going to be on YouTube, and YouTube is forever. So after the 15th antiphon, there are no more antiphons, but we still have gospels. If you remember, we only got through gospel number 5. And during gospels 6 through 8, we see a lot more of those elements that we're more familiar with from Orthros. For example, well, not for example, we first have the Beatitudes or the Makarismi. These are placed in this service instead of the Eulogataria. Looking ahead to next week, you'll talk about Holy Friday next week, and the Eulogataria get placed back into Orthros of Holy Friday. But for Holy Thursday, we still have the Beatitudes with the stichira that are interspersed throughout them that are very much dealing with the theme of the day. And I, you know, every year we go through this service, I really got to feel bad for Judas. Like, I know he did dirty and it wasn't very good, but it's constantly talked about how dirty he did and all of the dirty things he did and just how bad it was. Like, it was not nice. Then we hear the prokimenon, which, as we know from other classes, comes from the Psalms, and in this case, they parted my garments among them, and for my vesture they cast lots. We hear Psalm 50 interspersed after the 7th gospel. And then after the 8th gospel, we hear the canon. We hear those 3 odes. We hear the Kontakion, Ekos, and Synaxarion, followed by the Exapostolarian. And of course, there's little litanies interspersed throughout things. And then the Exapostolarian, which is, again, one of those very, those quintessential Orthros hymns. And the Exapostolarian for Holy Thursday is kind of interesting because it's a little bit different than what we've been doing at this point. Obviously, we're used to I Behold Thy Bridal Chamber from Bridegroom Orthros, and the Exapostolarian that is specific for the Holy Unction service. And then we get to this Exapostolarian, which in our book says is to the same melody as I Behold Thy Bridal Chamber. But as you're going to see in the music that we'll look at from Dr. Sam Kolmia, it's potentially its own melody. It never really fits fully into the I Behold Thy Bridal Chamber. We just do the best we can. Sing something in tone 3 and hope it sounds cool. Don't do that. I'm just kidding. Use the music that's on the website. I'm going to turn it over to Chris before I say anything more.
Okay. This is the piece that I was talking about in the introduction that was one of those life changers for me. When I heard that little falls choir singing this Exapostolarian, it pierced my heart. In one moment thou dost graciously grant paradise to the wise thief, O Lord. Illumine thou me also by the tree of the cross and save me. Oh my. I mean, that is everything. That is everything. Let's play that. And of course, we would sing that 3 times. But by the end of the evening, we've probably sung it 13 times because at the end of the service, we just can't leave. As people are venerating, we continue to sing it. And so, Greg,
It's awesome.
it's yours to illustrate other versions.
Just do that one.
Yeah, forever.
And if you don't have a full choir with you, just play the recording. I can send it to you. Uh, so Dr. Sam Colmia put together this version of the same hymn adapted from the Arabic books. No, thou didst make the thief worthy of paradise on the same day, O Lord. Wherefore illuminate me too by the tree of thy cross and save me. Sorry, I messed up. By the tree of thy cross and save me. And of course, there's the final ending. Save me.
Greg,
Yes, Chris.
one other thing. I think this is the same thing too. Instead of illuminate me, I think it's more proper, like the Hilco version says, is to illumine thou me, illumine me. So to illumine me, not illumine, make me illumined. That's what illuminate means. Is to make me illumined, illuminate. The 8 part. I think it's just illumine me, but that's all right.
Awesome.
Yes, illumine is a much better use
Yeah.
of it.
Yes. I do not disagree.
Good.
Following the Exapostolarian, we then hear the 9th Gospel, which then is followed by the praises, which are, again, the very quintessential Orthros thing, let everything that has breath praise the Lord. They're in tone 3, which I like. It's more fun. It's starting to shift to a little bit happier modes and have kind of a little bit more hope that we have following the beauty of the text that we just heard in the Exapostolarian. We hear the small doxology following the 8th Gospel. We hear the Apostica following the 10th Gospel. And then following the 12th Gospel, we hear the dismissal. And there's other prayers and things that are interspersed through Gospels 9 through 12, but the main keys are the praises, small doxology, Apostica, and dismissal. And then we all go forward and venerate the cross, and we have opportunities to sing a variety of things. Regarding what we end up singing during that final veneration, it's not free for all time. It's not everyone come up to the choir loft or the chanter stand and take an opportunity to sing whatever you want. Try to make sure things are being done within the from the service, within the order of things. Like, we it used to kill me, and I get both sides of the argument. All right. There's a guy in a parish that I know of who used to come every year on Holy Thursday just so he could sing "Today is Hung on the Tree." And he sang it beautifully. And he would mostly be in church all the other times. And he owned a restaurant, and he would literally come from the restaurant, sing that hymn, and then go back to the restaurant to close up. And like, it's a beautiful thing what he was doing, but at the same time, like, I get that he's making sacrifices. I also some of me was always like, so I can just show up when I want and sing the hymn that I want to sing and then leave. Like, there's everything that we do in the church is to be done in good order. And we need to always make sure that we're doing things in good order. And that good order is guided by our clergy, by our hierarchs, and our priests who are there in our parishes in the absence of the clergy. You know, I once saw someone go up to Bishop Basil when he was visiting an Antiochian parish and ask if they could sing something, and he told them no. And then that same person went up to the Greek bishop that Bishop Basil had said was okay. So it was in Pittsburgh, and it was during that same weekend. I was trying to like change things so
It's
that
okay.
the innocent would be protected. But and then went to the Greek bishop and asked, "Can I chant this?" And the Greek bishop said yes. And the Greek bishop was presiding on the throne, even though it wasn't his parish. And we listened to the Anixandaria chanted in Greek for like 15 minutes at the beginning of Orthros in an Antiochian parish where nobody there spoke Greek except the bishop who was there and maybe a few people that were there. And like, that's not good order. That's not how we do things. You know, the bishops know that that's not how we do things. They know to talk to each other. And they do talk to each other, and they know how ecclesiology works. And I'm totally rambling about all of this, but the point is, like, make sure that you guys that we always have a plan and that we're running through that plan with our clergy, because our clergy are the ones who are entrusted with taking care of the parish, and they are the ones who are entrusted with that awesome responsibility, and then also with the final decision making authority on that front. Anything you'd like to add, Chris, or anything else that we might have missed, or any questions?
We're just open to questions. Should we just
We've
play
got
our music again?
we've got a whole nother hour, you know, scheduled. But if there are no other questions, we can always call it an evening.
You could just play In One Moment again.
We could play In One Moment again. Let me find where that is.
I feel bad because 3 people just joined.
That's okay. Fine. That's fine.
That's absolutely amazing. Thank you again, Chris, for sharing that with
Oh,
us.
absolutely. Greg, maybe we could, let's see. Does everyone know where you can find all this music? And will it be accessible, Greg, on the
Yeah.
Archdiocese website Sacred Music page?
So let's look at that real quick.
Okay. Hi, Eleanor.
Say hi. I have a little sidekick for this portion. So when you go to the Archdiocesan homepage, you see it all here. Scrolling down, this is liturgics button is where we find our liturgical texts. But if you keep scrolling down, there's this sacred music button.
Oh,
When we click that button, it takes us to the sacred music site on the website, which then takes us as we scroll down to the sacred music library. And in that sacred music library, there is all kinds of fantastic music. If you click on this Holy Week tab, you'll find everything that we looked at tonight. You'll see all of the music that we looked at, and here's the Dr. Sam Colmia Exapostolarian and a choral version of the same in one moment that we just looked at. And as you scroll down to Holy Friday Matins, if you click on this, for example, it'll bring up all of the complete text of all the music. So even all of the antiphons that we didn't look at from the Hilco settings, and it will go from there. So there's a whole lot of stuff in that. Yeah, you think so? There's a whole lot of stuff in that sacred music library. So, and it's always being updated and continuing to be updated. So always make sure you're checking there. You know, there's a lot of new music coming out that we have opportunities to see when we go there.
Yes. Questions, anyone? Comments? Is there anything a little off topic that you'd like to talk about? We can open this up for counseling. Hi, Vicki Nimmer.
Michael Huber asked, is there a new canon for this coming Sunday? Sorry if I mispronounced your last name, Michael. I'll leave it to Father John, who just logged in, to share with us if he knows of anything coming down, or Chris Hallway, if you know of anything coming in.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi, Father John.
Hello. Just so I can understand the question better. So we're talking about like a new setting, like music setting for the canon, or there are specific, if I'm not mistaken, there is it's a special canon for the third Sunday of Lent. It is not the usual "I shall open my mouth," if I'm not mistaken. Let me just make sure, but I'm pretty sure that's what we is that the question?
That's how I understand it, Abuna. It's a different canon for the Sunday of the Cross.
Yes, and I'm just trying to get the first words of it and know which tone it is, because I just don't know it at the top of my
When
in
Moses struck the
tone
moist
one.
element with his rod.
it's in tone one, right?
And we don't have any new music coming out. The Kazan version is the only one that we have.
Yeah.
Daddy was going to write something, but we thought we had something from Holy Transfiguration, but we didn't have the text. So
Mhm.
maybe next year.
God willing. But it is a different one. It's not the one that we usually sing on the Feast of the Cross when Moses
No,
in tone 8. It's just a different text. It's specific for the third Sunday of Lent.
correct.
Thank you.
Vicky, to answer your question, yeah, I think a lot of places are in that same situation where we don't have the full choir and, you know, are just having chanting or whatever. I know at our parish here in Phoenix, we have a new chanter that is starting. Sonia El Messia has been teaching her how to chant, and it's been going very well. Her lessons are going awesomely well. But you know, many
Between
places are in
Sonia,
that same boat. I don't know when we have an end to that in sight, but hopefully soon.
and Eleanor, they're taking over the music department. So we need to be careful about our positions, all of us here. But which actually, it's actually something beautiful. At least we know there's a future for, you know, a young generation are, you know, interested in this and continue on our steps.
Absolutely.
Important.
Well, with no other questions, I think we'll call it an evening. Thank you all so much for being with us. We'll give you a little bit of this time back. And if I don't see you before, have a blessed Holy Week in Pascha, and have a great rest of your evening.
Now
Thank
you
you.
do know, Greg, that your daughter's getting excited because now she's saying, "Oh, I get daddy now."
Yeah, that's right.
Well, in closing, tune in next Tuesday for Byzantine and choral settings for Great and Holy Friday. The Lamentations, Pius Joseph, yeah. We'll have it all.
And big thank you to Chris Howard, who was able to get everything up and running, but wasn't able to join us tonight while he is in another rehearsal of his own. So shout out to you, Chris, when you hear this
Absolutely.
later.
Always, God bless
He-
them, always.
He's the glue. He holds it all together.
Super glue.
We appreciate him.
Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you.
Hey,
Thank
goodbye,
you.
everybody.
Good night.
Here's my, I really like it.